Breaking Down the Law is sponsored by Battle-Born Injury Lawyers.
Well, we heard from Faith Jesse right before the break. Protesters were demonstrating against proposed additions to the homeless ordinance. But I think the question is, what does it mean legally? What can they enforce? And of course, the ACLU says they don't like any of it, so they can expect some legal roadblocks. Matthew Hoffmann from Battle-Born Injury Lawyers here to break down the law in our weekly segment. Let's start with the basics. We're adding on to something that was already passed.
Right. The camping ban was passed in November. It goes into effect on February 1st. And that basically said that there's no camping as long as there's beds available at the various homeless shelters. If there's no beds available, camp away. This now is a new ordinance that deals with basically city cleaning. And so I think a lot of people have had experience with parking on the street.
Sure.
Not to compare people to cars, but parking on the street, you'll see where it'll say no parking Wednesdays from midnight to 6 a.m., for example.
Street sweeping
Exactly.
or whatever it may be.
And so if you're parked there during those hours, your car will get towed.
Sure.
So they're taking the same concept and applying it to the public sidewalks. And so what the city's just merely doing is trying to pass an ordinance that will now empower public works, the city maintenance, to designate areas and put up signs to tell people, hey, during these days of the week and these hours, you can't sleep, camp, sit, interfere with sanitization of the public sidewalks.
Because they're street sweeping, they're doing power washing of some of the streets where we do have an abundance of litter and trash and other various human elements that go along with people who are living on the streets.
And because this isn't, on paper 7 days a week, that doesn't really need the requirement that beds be available like the other ordinance.
But there is some flexibility here because right now we don't have times or days.
Right.
They could enact a full-time cleaning zone.
Right, so here's the concern, is that it's a backdoor homeless ban. So let's say that the city passes it. On paper, everything looks great. They hand it off to Public Works, to the city maintenance crew, and they say, okay, so that's fine. And then they just happen to designate the entire downtown corridor as 7 day a week, every night cleaning. And now you've effectively banned any sleeping, camping, sitting by homeless people on any of the public sidewalks in the area that just happens to have the vast majority of those people.
So there's two things that come to mind for me. First, if they can't be there out camping and sleeping, they're going to go somewhere where they can. If there still are not the beds open, which we know there are not yet, they're going to move out into the outskirts or wherever they might be able to find. Also, how is it enforceable? They're homeless because they don't have the money and the means to find shelter.
Well, and that's the other part of this, is that the fine is the same with the camping ban. It's 6 months in jail or $1,000 fine. Theoretically, I wouldn't think they can afford the $1,000.
I wouldn't think so either.
So you're basically jailing homeless people. Conversely, again, we have all these diversionary programs. You've now been jailed and you violated the law. Why were you homeless? Well, because you tested positive for drugs or alcohol. You get put in a diversionary program. I think that's kind of some of the backdoor goals of these laws.
I see.
Is to try to help people. But on the front end,
force their hand so that they do get clean.
Well, a lot of people don't go to the shelters because they have drug tests.
Sure.
That's why they don't go. And we just announced this $20 million homeless corridor renovation on Formaster and Las Vegas Boulevard. They're adding 800 beds. They're adding resource centers during the day. And so again, I think that the city is kind of doing a give and take. They're saying, look, we're providing more resources to make up for the fact that we're trying to get you off the streets.
Okay.
And I think that's where this is going, but that's the concerns of the ACLU.
A divisive issue, no doubt. There's certainly people on both sides. The law definitely sounds a little gray, Matthew.
We're going to have to see where it goes.
I think so. We'll wait and see. And of course, you're here to answer any questions for folks. You always do such a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for breaking that down, make it a little easier for folks to understand. Don't have to agree with what's happening, but at least if you can understand where the gray areas are, we can move forward and kind of watch what happens. Matthew Hoffmann, we enjoy having you here.